I spent the last 2 weeks studying the American Redoubt movement. The American Redoubt is the story of paranoia, fear of the government, white nationalists, extremism, and, you guessed it, religion. The American Redoubt is a political migration movement led by ultra-conservative Christians. The original goal of the movement was to claim Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and parts of Oregon and Washington to turn them into a heaven for God-fearing Americans. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the American Redoubt movement from its inception to its current state. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to never miss a video like this. First, the American Redoubt movement is marginal in the grand scheme of things. They're not about to take over America. But the American Redoubt is an actual thing. People really move to northern Idaho in the hopes to experience this so-called conservative heaven. Meet Don Bradway. He's the editor of Redoubt News. As such, he's a prominent voice in this movement. Bradway was featured in a Times video about the Redoubt. We will use his testimony, so let's start by hearing why he moved to the Redoubt in the first place.
We are concerned about freedom in California. So we came up here and looked around. We knew what to expect politically. This is what we need to be. So 3 weeks later, we came back, looked at a few houses, and bought this one.
Bradway later says, "What's interesting is that a number of years ago, Idaho was a blue state. Then people started to move here and say, this is not the way to do it. There were enough people who came here, got registered to vote, and said, we want to see changes." This is called a domestic political migration. Someone moves from one place to another for political reasons, and it can have an impact on American politics. Domestic migration is not always political, but it can reshape American politics in a myriad of ways. Georgia is a great example of changing demographics caused in part, but not exclusively, by domestic migration. The top 5 cities contributing to outsider influx into Georgia are New York, LA, Chicago, Seattle, and San Francisco, all Democratic strongholds. Overall, 15 of the 20 municipal destinations for all Georgia's newcomers were in counties that went for Biden in November 2020. So this phenomena is not new and it's not exclusive to the American Redoubt. For now, it appears that the American Redoubt movement is primarily focused in northern Idaho. It is a beautiful part of the country right along the Canadian border. Look at those landscapes. It also happens to be one of the least diverse regions in America. 93% of the population is white, 67% is Christian, and Trump won the state in a landslide in 2020. On January 6, 2021, 7 rioters from Idaho participated in the violent insurrection. It doesn't seem much, but Idaho is one of the least populous states in America. 7 rioters equals to a proportion of 3.6 rioters per million people, which is much higher when compared to Texas, but lower than Florida. So it's no surprise that today's American Redoubt is highly influenced by Trumpism, but this is a departure from the original idea of the American Redoubt movement, which is why it is so fascinating. The idea of the American Redoubt started in 2011, when this guy proposed the creation of a utopian society for religious Americans. James Wellesley Rawls is the ideator behind the American Redoubt movement, and this guy is fascinating because he's a little kooky. Rawls was born in California in 1960, where he got his degree in journalism. In the mid-80s, he joined the US military as an intelligence officer, but he resigned from his position as Army captain when Bill Clinton was inaugurated. He later went on to edit some magazines and write books. Rawls's background influenced the American Redoubt movement even today. For example, survivalism is embedded in the movement. James Wellesley Rawls describes himself as a constitutionalist Christian libertarian. Christian libertarianism is a form of libertarian political philosophy focusing on free will, human nature, and God-given rights. So Christian libertarianism makes a distinction between God-given rights, punishable by God only, and legal rights, enforceable by the government. In their eyes, only God has the legitimacy to grant rights. The government is illegitimate. This is not a new concept, by the way. God-given rights are alluded to in the Bible, for example. The concept of God-given rights, also called natural rights, was later expanded on during the Middle Ages by Catholic philosophers such as Albert the Great. And during the Age of Enlightenment, God-given rights were used to challenge the establishment, at the time the king's divine rights to rule. This contributed to make way for Republican ideals. Today, God-given rights are still used to challenge the establishment. But ironically, this time, Christian libertarians use them to question the legitimacy of the American Republic. They consider God-given rights to be above the authority of any government. But there is a small problem with God-given rights. These rights have never been clearly defined, and they have changed throughout history. That's why God-given rights are not universally accepted. For instance, philosopher Jeremy Bentham, who is regarded as the founder of modern utilitarianism, called God-given rights simple nonsense. So I hear you say, Guy, why are we talking about this? Well, the reason why we talk about God-given rights is because they are embedded at the heart of the American Redoubt movement. James Wellesley Rawls intended for the territory of the American Redoubt to be used as a retreat for God-fearing Americans in the event of a total collapse of American society. In this world, the term American society is often used interchangeably with Western society. This indicates a very ethnocentric view of the world, as though the United States embodies the only model for a Western society. Anyway, James Wesley Rawls is quoted saying, "The plain truth is that in a societal collapse, there will be a veritable vacuum of law enforcement. In such times, with a few exceptions, it will only be the God-fearing that will continue to be law-abiding." So the American Redoubt movement is built on the assumption that America will eventually fall, and when that happens, according to them, only God's law and survival instinct will prevail. People who adhere to the American Redoubt believe that the following scenario is plausible. Imagine this. American society collapses, the government falls, the banking system too. It's total chaos in the streets of New York, Chicago, and Houston. Children go hungry, violence is rampant, legal rights can't be enforced without the government. It's the total collapse of a modern American civilization. Meanwhile, God-fearing Americans living in the American Redoubt are sheltered from the chaos because they live their lives according to God's law. The American Redoubt survives the collapse of American society thanks to God-given rights, guns, and survivalism. By the way, if you like this video, just like the video. It helps other people like you find this video and it grows our community. Thank you. Naturally, this Americanized view of doomsday helps the American Redoubt attract religious Americans who distrust the government. But you might be surprised to know that at the beginning, the American Redoubt was not exclusively made for white conservative Christians. Rawls said they would also welcome Messianic and Orthodox Jews. Rawls has also expressed his opposition to racism due to his Christian faith. All that matters, according to him, is whether someone accepts Christ as his Lord and Savior. That concept is somewhat echoed in today's American Redoubt. Despite that, many have accused the American Redoubt of wanting to create a white ethno-state. Geopolitics and history play a role here. Historically, the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and a portion of Montana has been proposed by many white supremacists as a location for the establishment of a white ethno-state. For example, the 70s and the 80s saw the rise of the Northwest Territorial Imperative. The Northwest Imperative movement advocated for the creation of a white ethno-state in the Pacific Northwest. White supremacists and neo-Nazi groups encouraged their supporters to relocate in these states. The suggested boundaries of the Northwest Territorial Imperative movement are very similar to that of the American Redoubt. In the 90s, the Aryan Nation, the notoriously racist and violent organization led by Richard Butler, decided to set their headquarters in North Idaho. There are some reasons to believe that these past movements are now colliding and merging with the American Redoubt. Some people who used to adhere to the Northwest Territorial Imperative movement now use the term American Redoubt as though it was a sort of rebranding. Let's listen to what this county sheriff had to say.
This is a very old idea. It's been rebranded They're using religion once again. Come live where everybody believes the same way you do.
And what do you think of the dangers of that?
Extremism.
As always, I would love to know what you think about this topic, so make sure to leave a comment below and I will respond to as many as possible. Obviously, religion is extremely prevalent in the American Redoubt, especially Christianity. But extremist conservative ideals seem to have made their way into this subculture. Here's what the editor of Redoubt News had to say.
We don't care what religion you are, so long as you come in with the thinking that you agree with your compatriots here.
So, to belong in the American Redoubt of today, you must be conservative. It shows how Rawls's original idea was redefined by its adherents. The movement is now self-defining and has become bigger than its creator. While they're waiting for American society to collapse, those who move to the American Redoubt do so in opposition to the authority of Washington, D.C.
Hey, Washington, D.C., you just take care of yourselves, leave us alone, we're seceding. Well, you can't do that. Hold my beer. Watch us.
Many observers of the American Redoubt movement compare it to the exodus of Puritans in the 17th century, meaning that there is a form of precedent in American history. Between 1621 and 1643, thousands of English Puritans migrated from Europe to North America, establishing colonies that later merged into the United States. The major difference, of course, is that pilgrims were actually persecuted in England in the 17th century, unlike Christians in the United States in the 21st century. Nonetheless, many people who join the American Redoubt movement feel persecuted by modern American society. James Wellesley Rawls actually alluded to a theoretical persecution by the United States when demographic consolidation through political migration to the American Redoubt materializes in greater numbers. He predicts that the government would hammer any states that attempt to secede in the name of the American Redoubt. At times in his writing and in interviews, Rawls seems to have some form of paranoia. He famously keeps the location of his ranch a secret, although it's said to be located somewhere west of the Rockies. This sense of persecution and paranoia is very present in the American Redoubt of today, notably in the form of election denialism.
People that we hang with are politically astute. We pay attention to what's going on. The numbers did not add up. Something's gone on here. So there was a tremendous amount of anger. There still is.
By the way, thank you so much for participating in my community poll. The next banned book we will read is Mouse, so I'll start working on this as soon as Flamer hits 200 likes. Remember, this guy is the editor of Redoubt News, which is a so-called news website. It traffics in conspiracy theories and disinformation. So when he says that people in the American Redoubt are politically astute, it's questionable. Let's pay attention to the words he's using in this next clip because it encompasses most of what we talked about so far.
Joe Biden and his minions are leading this country down the road to perdition. Right? That's how we look at it.
So right away, he uses Christian language, perdition, to oppose the authority of Joe Biden, the leader of the government. It's also a way to present Biden in direct opposition to Christianity. It vilifies him.
He is there illegally, and I am not ashamed to say that. I will tell that to anybody. What he has done is wrong.
After characterizing Joe Biden as the enemy of Christianity, he goes on to echo the conspiracy theory that the 2020 election was stolen and that Joe Biden is the illegitimate president of the United States, a situation that speaks to the American Redoubt belief that American society is certain to collapse. Earlier in this video, we talked about January 6th, and the reason why it's relevant in this video is because inside the American Redoubt, the event, the violent insurrection on the Capitol, has taken a form of mythical status.
We had a lot of people who were very angry at what the United States government has done. And whether the left likes it or not, we've got enough evidence to show that there is massive fraud with the election. People are angry.
He later says that January 6th, according to him, was not an insurrection. He also adds that January 6th helped build the American Redoubt movement.
My neighbors all think that it was an insurrection. I don't want to be with those kind of people. I want out of here. We're going to North Idaho because I read Redoubt News. They think like I think.
It's easy to see how political migrations can lead to groupthink. Groupthink is a phenomenon that occurs when a group of individuals reaches a consensus without critical reasoning or evaluation of the consequences or alternatives. Groupthink is based on a common desire not to upset the balance of a group of people. So when he says, "we are politically astute," he suggests that their group cannot be wrong about Joe Biden and the 2020 election because they hold the belief that they are well informed. And since everyone in the group agrees that Joe Biden is illegitimate,
Most people said, no, something's gone on here.
they conclude that they must be right. This is groupthink.
And that's who you're going to find up here, going to be angry Trump supporters. People who know that election was stolen.
In the case of the American Redoubt, this groupthink is caused by political migration, and the media they consume probably reinforces the phenomena. Like many conservative movements, the American Redoubt comes with its own inward-looking media ecosystem. They have news outlets, radio shows, social media accounts, and so on. For example, we're gonna hear some clip from a radio show, and you'll see how they reinforce the belief that already exists inside the American Redoubt that the government is illegitimate and that they should do something about it.
They are not upholding any of our constitutional laws whatsoever because they're communists and they're in a takeover mode. They're sitting in the highest seat in the land, illegitimately, but they're still sitting in that seat.
Yep.
And until we rectify it.
Yeah, we need a revival, I'll tell you that.
In the following clip, the radio/podcast host explains what his motivations are.
I started a podcast called Radio Free Redoubt to promote the strategic relocation of conservative, Christian, like-minded patriots to the inland Pacific Northwest.
He also frames the idea of the American Redoubt as a battle between good and evil.
This is spiritual warfare. Really, this is what it's going to come down to. This is a battle of good against evil. This is Christ versus Antichrist spirit.
I mean, this is clearly religious extremism. Even in the American Redoubt, you can't escape advertisement.
There is an exodus happening in America today, from cities full of crime and corruption to the rural areas of clean and sustainable living. Like-minded patriots are coming to North Idaho in search of a simpler, self-reliant lifestyle. I'm Chris Walsh, broker and owner of Revolutionary Realty, based in the heart of America's Great Redoubt, North Idaho.
This ad hits all the marks. They talk about the downfall of American society,
from cities full of crime and corruption,
present the alternative,
the rural areas of clean and sustainable living,
and sell the solution.
Like-minded patriots are coming to North Idaho in search of a simpler, self-reliant lifestyle.
And this ad plays to an audience who already ascribe to all these concepts. This begs the question, what is life like in the American Redoubt? It depends. For one, the American Redoubt is not aggregating in a fixed place. It's not in a specific gated community or a specific county. It's more of an idea that spreads across state borders. Remember this ad?
I'm Chris Walsh, broker and owner of Revolutionary Realty.
Well, here's the realtor behind it.
Those folks were looking for freedom, they wanted clean water, and they wanted non-interference. They didn't want to be told what to do. You see so many of these people come up here because they want those freedoms, and a lot of them have just been taken away.
Many people live off the grid as per James Wesley's original idea of the American Redoubt. According to the realtor who sells remote houses in the American Redoubt, fear plays a big role in this political migration movement.
The vast majority of people that are coming here out of danger. The homeless live on the streets and claim them as their own property. People are in large part right now being driven by their fear.
The realtor also says that defendability is highly requested by his clients, which brings us to the next topic. Guns. Yes, they love guns in the American Redoubt. They're afraid of homeless people, but not guns. Go figure. Idaho is a very pro-gun state. According to AZDefenders.com, Idaho is the 5th best state to own a gun. There are no waiting period to get a gun, no universal background checks. It's an open carry state, and there is no capacity limit. This guy owns a gun club in the Redoubt. He says that people who come to Idaho looking for homes go to his club with their realtors. These gun laws in Idaho are a big selling point for their clients.
Many people have been showing up to run through the safety brief while they're joining with their realtors. They're taking a break out to join while they look at properties. A lot of the guys will carry openly, and that's because they can't where they came from. We try and educate them otherwise, but it is permissible and allowed. Liberal in the classical sense gun laws of Idaho is an attractant to many people.
As a Canadian, it feels really strange to see children handling guns, but that's a conversation for another time, I guess. Many in the American Redoubt say they carry guns to protect themselves from the government. That's unsurprising, if you ask me. This is a frequent talking point on the right.
Banning guns might cut down on these mass shootings. It might cut, a government monopoly on violence is going to cut down on the violence among the people. But some of us want to protect the founding, and the founders gave us the right to bear arms for a very specific reason. They didn't want the government to have that monopoly, the federal government. They wanted states to be able to quickly assemble militias so that states could protect their rights against federal government overreach.
This obsession with guns takes a whole new meaning in the American Redoubt. Meet former Republican Representative Matt Shee. He was accused of domestic terrorism against the United States after he organized 3 armed conflicts of political violence, including the planning and preparation of an armed takeover of a wildlife refuge in Oregon. Today, this guy is a spokesperson for the American Redoubt. He's also a wannabe Trump.
There are tens of thousands of teams that are already organized in the American Redoubt. Keep organizing, keep organizing, keep organizing. I want to talk about why you guys are supporting a racist organization like Black Lives Matter. Will they denounce critical race theory? And they're not reporters, they're propagandists.
He leverages groupthink that's already present inside the American Redoubt to go after people who oppose him, like human rights advocates.
Identify the communists and jihadists in your area, okay? We're going to start with the Montana Human Rights Network, okay? They were like, did you hear Matt Shea's plan? It's to create a white ethno-state.
This goes to show the real danger of a political migration movement like the American Redoubt. The isolation, the inward-looking media ecosystem, and the groupthink in the American Redoubt makes these people much more susceptible to fall for someone like Matt Shee, who's hungry for power and revenge. The sheriff puts it best.
The leadership of the American Redoubt right now are the same politicians that have talked extremism, that have literally tried to start a civil war in this nation. Those are your leaders right now.
So I guess this sums up the American Redoubt. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, just like the video. You might also like this one. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye!